It was a gutsy performance from Miami, but ultimately Cleveland had too much size and too much firepower as the Heat dropped game one of their playoff matchup versus the Cavs. Can Erik Spoelstra find a response in time for game two? We'll answer that and more on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. For daily content on the Heat, click that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you're following us on your podcast app. Your favorite podcast now is a newsletter introducing the Locked On Heat daily newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Locked On Heat newsletter. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $250 in bonus bet when your first $5 bet wins. We have a jam-packed show for you today, recording this after the Heat lost game one to the Cavs. They hung around for a while, and then Ty Jerome happened. He erupts in the fourth quarter, and the Cavs pull away. It's not surprising that Miami lost, David, but I do think that this game was a little surprising in just the way that it played out. So I want to get to some overreactions from this game in a second, but I want to start with a what we learned segment. You could start with something from the Heat or from the Cavs, but what did you learn about how these teams are going to approach this series after game one?
Well, they're definitely trying to make things difficult for Tyler Herro. I think we saw that denying the paint. Miami was just unable to get anything easy at the rim, and you can attribute that to Cleveland's size, but I think they did a pretty good job in terms of their point attack defense, making sure they challenge anybody on the perimeter, or send at least one defender there, just put a body in front of anybody trying to attack the paint. Not till Davion Mitchell later in the game did he find some way of trying to at least create an opportunity for himself or others in the painted area. But for the most part, for the first 2 or 3 quarters, it seemed like Miami just was walled off completely, and without it, their offense completely fell apart. They just didn't seem to have an answer aside from trying to attack the mid-range or maybe get lucky and find an open shot from the perimeter. But other than that, there wasn't much steady offense, and you could see the difference in terms of how Cleveland's offense was so much more fluid than Miami. They had to work for everything. They got down early. To their credit, they were able to come back and challenge Cleveland, especially that as they went on a 12-4 run before the end of the half. So they made things a little bit closer than they might have appeared. And they even cut it down to, I think, 7 or 6 in the fourth quarter. So they were, as you said, hanging around, but their offense was just really just broken in terms of what Cleveland was doing to them defensively. And I think that's the difference between this year's team, the Cavaliers team, and last year's Cavaliers team, is that their defense is significantly better. They find a way to make things difficult for opponents, even as they have the firepower clearly to put up a lot of points.
Yeah, you look at this Cleveland team all year, and everybody keeps, they're thought of as an offensive team. They were one of the most efficient offenses in the league, second overall in offensive rate, or first overall rather in offensive rating. They were a pretty good defense. They were 8th in defensive rating. Miami was 9th. They were a better defense on balance than Miami was all season. And you're absolutely right. They made it hard for Tyler Herro, and that was really loud, I thought, in this game. And as soon as they kind of made it hard for Tyler Herro, it just felt like the rest of the Heat offense just didn't work. They cut the head of the snake off, and that was it. And Bam kind of started finding his spots, and there's some stuff that we can get into there that's a little interesting. When Miami, if they spread the floor, isolate Bam on one side, he kind of likes that Jared Allen matchup a little bit, and I think that might be something that you could build on. But overall, I mean, that's just like a little bit of water coming out of the faucet, because most that hose was basically just turned off for the entire game. You look at just the shot profile. It's amazing to me that Miami was in this game for as long as that they were. When you just look at the shot profile, 5 shots at the rim the entire game. That's it. They just didn't get to the basket. 0 in the first quarter overall. They did not get to the basket at all. 5 shots at the rim compared to 44 mid-range attempts in this game and 31 threes. That math doesn't math. That's not going to work in this series. And the Heat were in this game because there was just some crazy three-point shot making. They They made 42% of their threes in this game, which is just, again, an insane amount, which it's the same percentage that Cleveland shot. But you looked at what Miami was getting, and it was one thing. They actually did, I thought, a decent job getting some good looks from three-point range. They beat Cleveland's zone a little bit a couple of times. They were able to generate some decent looks. You got, Wiggins got 6 attempts. Tyler Herro got 6 attempts. You got Davion Mitchell that had 3 attempts, but Alec Burks had 3 attempts. Like, those are the guys who you want taking threes, but you also don't necessarily want Bam taking 5 threes, which is what he did in this game too. So, again, kind of a miracle that just by sheer shot making. And by the way, the mid-range stuff was huge too. The Heat shot 21 of 44 from the mid-range. I mean, that's a pretty decent percentage when it's all said and done. And I just don't know that's not to me reliable offense, right? That's not sustainable offense in this series.
Yeah, Bam was really good, I think, in terms of the mid-range. Like, I think you're right about that matchup with Allen. It seemed like he understood, well, I can't get to him. I can't pass him to the rim. At the very least, I can use my fluidity and my smooth jumper to try and hit those shots. And it seemed like that was working either from the wing or from even in the painted area. And he did have that 1 3-pointer where it seemed like he was maybe dialed in a little bit, but I wouldn't use that as the basis of any kind of modern offense. That's not enough to really power you through especially when they're shooting from 25 to 30 feet out. Like Ty Jerome was putting up shots. Sam Merrill was putting up shots. Donovan Mitchell, obviously. They had so many scorers find a way to exploit Miami's defense, and they were hitting some tough shots. Darius Garland also. Miami just needs to find a much more reliable source of offense, particularly and hopefully from the perimeter, and then at the rim as well. And I don't know that that's realistic considering Cleveland's size and the way that they play defense.
There was the very first possession of the game. Max Strus is in a full court press on Tyler Herro on the inbound. He's denying the inbound to Tyler Herro, and so they had to go in another way. And that basically was just the game. They spent the entire game face guarding Tyler Herro. And if you're going to take him out offensively that way and then make him work, not just on the defensive end, every team's going to make Tyler Herro work on the defensive end, and he was working on the defensive end. And he was getting worked on the defensive end. But they're also wearing him out on offense because he's running laps on offense just trying to get open. So he's being worn down on both ends of the floor. And as we've seen, like, this is very different, right? The Cavs, one of the best teams in the league. This is different than playing Chicago or Atlanta in the play-in tournament when Tyler Herro averaged more than 30 points in the play-in tournament. This is a very different kind of matchup, and the Heat are going to have to figure out, like, the first thing I think Erik Spoelstra has to do between games 1 and 2 is how do we make it easier for Tyler Herro offensively so that he doesn't have to work so hard, and then he's not so worn down that by the time the fourth quarter happens, that Ty Jerome flurry in the fourth quarter, every single one of those shots were hit with Tyler Herro's face. Like, there was just nothing he could do. He was totally worn down by the fourth quarter. So they got to figure that out. A couple other things that stood out to me in terms of what we learned. Yeah. Both teams are going to use a healthy amount of zone, I think, in this series. Maybe not right away, but Miami, I had this written down. I was like, okay, so the Cavs are taking away Tyler Herro, and the Heat have to figure out other stuff to get to. But what are the Heat taking away from Cleveland? It felt like nothing the entire game. And then they went to the zone, and then they started taking the paint touches away. And that's when they started making their little run. So the Cavs will have some sort of adjustment, but I do think I was wondering if we see the zone because Cleveland is such a prolific three-point shooting team that doesn't necessarily jive with the zone defense. But we learned that Spo will at least try it in doses.
Yeah, I don't know how much more to add to that. I'm trying to think of what Spo can do differently to make things easier for Tyler Herro. Maybe more Spain sets. I'm trying to get a little bit more, double set action or just double screen action where they can, have a variety of different. It just seemed like Miami's offense was very predictable. They would set that screen, dribble around, try to find somebody to pop open, and there was nobody. Very little off-ball movement, and I think you can credit Cleveland's defense on doing a good job of, again, putting bodies in front of people, just staying on their hip, making things more difficult. But it didn't seem like there were a lot of open looks. I mean, you mentioned that Miami was getting some open looks at the 3, but that was basically, at least from my perspective, it seemed like a lot of those shots were either at the end of the shot clock or near desperation type shots where it's like, well, we haven't been able to do anything for 18, 19 seconds. We've got to get a shot open.
They hit a lot of bailout shots in this game.
Yes, they did.
And that's why I'm not
forward. Haywood Highsmith in a couple spots, like Bama in the corner. He's like, oh, I guess I have the ball. Might as well do something with 3 seconds left on the clock, and he winds up hitting it. But that's not, again, sustainable.
No.
And you can't find easy offense. And like you see the difference. Like you have a superstar like Donovan Mitchell. Hell, everything's so much easier. Like he can get to the rim at will. It doesn't matter who's defending him, whether it's Bam, Haywood Highsmith, Andrew Wiggins, anybody. He was able to get to the rim, and if not, he's going to get bailed out by a foul call, or if not, he's going to spot up from 28 feet and find a way to knock those things down. I think they did a pretty good job over the course of the game of making things more difficult for him, and it still didn't seem to matter. He got his, and then Ty Jerome goes off, and it's like, well, you got to pick your poison somehow.
We've got our overreactions next, including whether or not the Heat already lost this series. We'll tell you why that might be the case coming up on Locked On Heat.
NBA fans, you know what time it is. Playoff season means big performances and even bigger rewards. DoorDash is bringing the Heat with a slam dunk deal for Dash Pass members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. It's called They Swoosh, You Score. Anytime a player drops 50 or more in the playoff game, Dash Pass members score a free 3-piece crispy tender combo from Wingstop the very next day. I know you're going to get those lemon pepper wings. Just place an order of $20 or more and use the code WINGSTOP50 at checkout, and that combo is yours. Crispy, delicious, and totally free. Offer valid noon to midnight the day after the game. Terms to apply. What's your go-to move after an epic game? Are you ordering wings and reliving the highlights? Well, imagine being rewarded with free food just because someone went off for 50 points. Hasn't happened yet, but it could. The playoffs are still early. Here's the play. Sign up for Dash Pass and unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. When any player scores 50-plus in a playoff game, Dash Pass members can grab a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the next day with a $20 order and code WINGSTOP50. That's WINGSTOP50. That's Dash Pass. Your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms do apply, and we'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. The best way to support the show, like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. All right, David, I want to do some Game 1 overreactions. The point is to overreact here. So we don't necessarily mean these things. We're overreacting on them. But my number one overreaction is that the Miami Heat need to double Ty Jerome, because there is nothing that guy wasn't hitting until they started doubling him in the fourth quarter. They doubled him like one time and got the ball out of his hands. I don't think that they can afford for Ty Jerome to take 15 shots a game in this series. He goes 10 of 15 for 28 points off the bench for Cleveland. I tweeted it, and I don't even know if it's a joke. Miami was a Ty Jerome eruption away from maybe stealing Game 1, but we could talk about all these different things. Take his 28 points out of the equation here, and this game is obviously a lot closer.
Yeah, I mean, I know that's not exactly how the math works. Somebody else will put up their shots, if not Jerome. But I see your point, and I don't know if you're going to be able to get that kind of a performance from him consistently. Like, he's been really good this season. Obviously, he's provided a heck of a spark, and he's in the conversation for Sixth Man of the Year. And yet, I mean, it seemed like his confidence was just on another level, and he was talking smack. He was feeling himself. He was getting to the lane. He drew a foul on a couple of occasions, and he just let everybody know it. He's kind of unstoppable, which is kind of hilarious considering his journey. But here he was, putting up a big game. And he looked very comfortable in that role of providing that kind of spark and doing a heck of a job. So I don't know if doubling him necessarily is going to work, but you certainly have to find a way to make things at least a little bit more difficult for him. You have to find a way to challenge him, because I don't think he's as good as he looked on Sunday night, and yet he looked very comfortable in that role. And so you're going to have to find a way to make things a little bit uncomfortable. I don't know if you can afford to, leave somebody else open, or whether or not you can just send a single on Donovan or Darius Garland, whoever's out there sharing the floor with Jerome.
He was doing the thing that Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland was doing, where it was just calling up Tyler Herro's guy and then picking on Tyler Herro. It's one thing for Mitchell and Garland to pick on Tyler Herro, because at least that makes sense.
Sure.
But just like, even aesthetically, just seeing a guy like Ty Jerome, who looks like Ty Jerome, picking on a guy that looks like Tyler Herro, I'm just like, what is going on right now?
Yeah, Tyler's got to take that personally. Like, I mean, I know he's going to live with this loss for a couple of days. It's going to eat at him, but he's got to see that film and realize he's better than this. And I don't know.
Ty Jerome hit some tough shots. I thought Herro played some decent defense on some of those, but his defense does have to be better. You're right. But again, they wore him down. We were talking about some of the adjustments too, and you know what Cleveland is going to do every series, whether it's Jerome or Mitchell or Garland, they're going to pull up Tyler Herro's guy and then get Herro in the mix. And they did it to Khalil Ware a lot too. They picked on the rookie a little bit in this game in pick and roll and stuff like that. I don't know what Miami can do, but it just felt like when guys like Sam Merrill were on the court, they weren't doing that. They weren't picking on Sam Merrill. They didn't. You can pick on Darius Garland. They were not picking on Darius Garland. And credit to Cleveland, like they have built systems in to the point where like, hey, we know that people are going to try to target these guys. We know how to kind of we have escape hatches to get out of these scenarios, but Miami has those things too, and it didn't matter. Cleveland still got the switches that they wanted to get. So I think Erik Spoelstra's got to figure out, like, to me, you were talking about, do they run more double drags, handoffs, maybe a Spain pick and roll? I do think that they need to find actions before the actions to start manipulating some of these matchups a little bit. It's like, okay, get this action first, and then maybe it's not Tyler Herro necessarily going off, but all of a sudden we've got Bam on a small, and maybe it's him, or maybe it's Wiggins on a small in the post, and maybe it's that guy. And then all of a sudden stuff starts, you have to overreact to that if you're Cleveland's defense, and then maybe Herro gets freed up a little bit after that. But my next overreaction, Duncan Robinson is going to get into a fight in this series, is my next overreaction, David. Why does he leads the league in fights that he got into that he doesn't mean to get into?
Yeah, I don't know what the heck happened there. I know what you're referring to. It seems like he's on defense, and inexplicably he winds up setting a screen against Sam Merrill. Sam Merrill kind of just flops to the ground. I guess Duncan, being as big as he is, just kind of overpowered him to some degree there. He wasn't really moving, so I guess it's a foul technically. I didn't really think it should have been called, given the context of the game and everything else like that. But he's kind of arguing with the ref, standing near Merrill.
Not over Merrill, just sort of near him.
Not over.
Yeah.
Just near him. And then Donovan Mitchell comes over and shoves him, like kind of pushes him out of the way. And look, the Cavs were feeling themselves at that point. They were kind of cocky, and rightfully so, given the record over the regular season, the strength of what they showed in this game in particular. But I don't know that shove was necessary. I don't know why Mitchell took umbrage to it. Maybe it just looked worse. Like maybe he thought Duncan had shoved Merrill down to the ground or something like that. But he's just got one of those, I guess, demeanors, and he starts getting. He talks a little bit himself. We've talked to him about it. Duncan just talks sometimes, but I don't think he means anything by it. And I don't know. Maybe again, you feel like you can pick on him a little bit, and maybe start something. He's not going to back that up.
He's a white guy from New England, you know. Those guys tend to have punchable faces, and I like Duncan Robinson a lot. I'm not saying he has a punchable face, but I'm just saying
definitely not.
Those are the kinds of people that tend to get into fights that they don't necessarily mean to get into, are white guys from New England, right? So
I wish somebody else would have come up and kind of defend him a little bit. You know, that's where the camaraderie, and I know it's been overstated, and I'm not going to bag on it too much, but like Bam and his friendship with guys like Tatum and Donovan Mitchell, like Bam needs to go in there. If you can tell a reporter pre-game that you don't give a damn about Max Strus, you can go and tell Donovan Mitchell and put his 6'4" or 6'3", 6'2", however tall Donovan actually is, and put him in the stance. Like you're big enough to do this. Like no one on that Cleveland side is scary. Like no one can overpower Bam Adebayo. He's the strongest guy out there.
I like this as a strategy in this series to just look. We don't have as much talent, but we might be meaner than you.
Yeah,
like
but they don't show that.
They don't, and they need to. I think they need to. Davion does. Duncan Robinson apparently does. But we need the rest. We need the rest of this group to do that. I think
Bam needs to.
Bam needs to. You're right. He's the leader.
Like foul somebody.
You're right.
Like throw an elbow, and then at some point, if you're getting blown out in game 2, just punch somebody. Who cares?
Next overreaction. Andrew Wiggins is playing for his Heat career. He needs to be good. I don't think he was terrible in this game. 14 points on 5 of 11 shooting, but he did the Wiggins thing that was like, wait, he played 38 minutes? Because it didn't feel like that. And he needs to make a bigger impact. He also made probably more mistakes than anybody within Miami's zone. When Cleveland did bust it for a couple of threes, it was Wiggins who was late on the closeout and was a little bit out of position to start the defensive possession, which maybe should be, like, he didn't go through training camp. He's not versed in the zone defense, right? I don't know that Golden State was running a whole lot of zone when Wiggins was on the floor there. But he's playing, like, you know, you don't have excuses when you're the 8th seed against the 1 seed in the playoffs. Like, I think he needs to be better. He needs to make more of an impact. And if he's a little rough around the edges in the zone defense or whatever, that's fine. But even offensively, he needs to take a little bit more initiative, I thought.
I mean, to the larger point, though, in that question or comment, I should say, I guess it's basically if he plays really, really well and you can look at him as being much more than a complimentary player, then I guess it makes the front office consider if you don't have to include him in a deal for a
Right. Is he a
superstar.
core
But
piece or is he a trade piece?
I
Right.
think he's a trade piece regardless.
now?
Like,
Well, that's
yeah,
why that's why it's sort of an overreaction. All right, next one. This is not that interesting.
Right.
I think they need to start Davion Mitchell, and I really don't even know if this is an overreaction.
It is not.
Yeah,
It is not. I think it's given what we saw in overtime against Atlanta, given what we saw throughout this game when he was great, again getting to the rim, willing to take the three, the feistiness to him. Like he's not going to back down. He's going to challenge Donovan, and maybe he'll get into foul trouble. But he wound up playing a heck of a lot of minutes anyway. But just start him and just see what you can do out there. I mean, you're not getting anything from Alec Burks, and so that being the case, like I understand the idea that you need a shooter out there, a complementary player to Tyler. But Donovan helps Tyler play off ball, and that frees him up a little bit and gets him maybe some of those open looks, especially if Davion's able to get into the painted area a little bit, get into the rim. That leaves Tyler open from three, I think, if he draws the defense as he typically does. And so I think you'll be able to generate better looks for Tyler Herro, and that would be what would open, to use your analogy, that would open the hose quite completely open. And get you the floodwaters that you need offensively.
Miami's best offense is when Davion Mitchell was getting 2 feet in the paint, and he was doing the best at it. He's got that quick first step, and we know what he could do defensively. And there's the obvious thing of, hey, don't let Garland or Donovan Mitchell get started early. You put Davion Mitchell out there; he can at least guard those guys from the jump. And I think setting that tone early on is really important, right? We love the bench unit and all that stuff, but you could shorten the bench. They used. I mean, I don't know how much you could shorten the bench. They basically used 8 guys. Kyle Anderson had like a small cameo in this game. But does Alec Burks, if he's not starting, is he in pen in the rotation? I don't think so. So it might open up the door, and we'll get to this in a little bit, of other guys potentially working their way into the rotation. But for Davion, it's not just the defensive stuff. And by the way, him being next to Tyler Herro is really important. Alec Burks is not awesome defensively either. But if you have Davion out there, maybe he can fight through some of those switches a little bit better, and now Tyler Herro is not all of a sudden getting switched into every single action from the jump. So I think that's really important. But then to your point, too, he's also a better ball handler than Alec Burks. Davion Mitchell is. He's more of a natural point guard than Burks is, and that's really important.
Does that make Kyle Anderson your backup point guard then?
I do want, perhaps, that could be it. But we'll talk about rotation tweaks here in a second. My last overreaction before we leave this segment. The Heat already lost the series. That was their best chance to steal a game. They made a ton of tough shots, and they're going to have to look. They're not as talented as Cleveland. They're gonna have to make tough shots to make this a series. That's point blank a requirement. They're gonna have to make shots that they otherwise would not make in order for this series to be competitive. But they made a lot of those shots in this game, and you could argue I know it ended up being a 21-point loss. It was a lot closer than that for most of the game. Like this one was sort of up for grabs, up until the point that Ty Jerome just erupted. But if Jerome doesn't have that huge fourth quarter, maybe we're talking about, oh my God, I can't believe Miami stole the first game of this series. But now, Cleveland, after that week off, they now know what to expect out of Miami. This was, I thought, a chance to kind of get them like element of surprise a little bit here, playing well off the play-in tournament. You're feeling yourself. You lose this one in the way that you lost it. A little wind out of your sails. Again, it's an overreaction on purpose, but if we're looking at the series at the end of this thing and be like, yeah, would it be shocking if we looked back and been like, that was the game that the Heat had the best chance to steal?
Yeah, I think you're right in that sense. Like we did talk about this before going into the series, that Miami, was Miami going to be in enough of a rhythm after 2 solid play-in games to be competitive against Cleveland? I think we saw that for 40 minutes. But Cleveland essentially overpowered them by just their nature of being a far better team. Like they're a really good team, and I know everybody wants to feel the excitement of the play-in tournament and be like, this is who Miami is. They don't back down. That's all great and good, but I mean, the Miami Heat had a 66-16 season, and everybody talks about that team still 20. I mean, on that 13 years later. And that was a really good team and a historically good team with 3 Hall of Famers and Ray Allen and et cetera. They won 64 games falling ass backwards, and they lost a lot of games late in the season when it didn't matter anymore. Like this was a really, 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 really good Cleveland team. And I I'm not losing my fandom or whatever, being a homer for Cleveland or anything like that by acknowledging that a 64-win team in the NBA that has several double-digit win streaks over the course of the season, that they're really good. That shouldn't surprise anybody. So I see your point that Miami had to go in there and provide an element of surprise. I'm curious to see how they respond, because typically a team at home kind of takes their foot off their gas. They could actually even build on it and say, like, oh, we already got that game 1 win when we were rusty. Now we know how to kind of blow this group up, and they might look to just put their foot on Miami's throat. How does Miami respond? Because that's been the question all season. Like, there has not been a clearly established identity in terms of how do they face those kind of challenges. And if they come out in game 2 with purpose and some tweaks here and there, not just changes to the starting lineup, and they have the kind of intensity from the very first tip, then maybe they'll have a chance of pulling off an upset in game 2.
How do the Heat respond? We'll talk about that more after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel, you can place your first $5 bet, and you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking your favorite team or diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. That's FanDuel.com. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. The playoffs are here. Can the Heat advance in the playoffs? Stay in the know with the Locked On Heat podcast newsletter and get a chance to win one of these amazing prizes by subscribing. A $2,500 Best Buy gift card to upgrade your Sports Cave setup. Maybe a $300 Game Time gift card or a $200 Fanatics gift card. Sign up right now to be entered into our Locked On Heat news. Our Locked On Heat newsletter delivers real-time updates, expert analysis, and playoff insights tailored to you. Subscribe now for free at the Locked On Heat podcast newsletter and stay ahead as the season unfolds. Subscribe today. Click the link in the description to enter LockedOnDaily.com. Let's get to some of our listener questions. Thanks to everybody who sent in these questions via the Locked On Heat Insider community. You can sign up with the link in the show notes.
Before we get to listener questions, I've got a question from this listener.
Okay.
What was it about Khalil Ware? Because it just seemed like this might have been a matchup that he could have been a little bit more effective. And I know Cleveland's size is much more experience, and they combine their size and strength much more effectively than Ware does. But I thought he would be a little bit more impactful. And then in late in the game, when Miami was trying to keep pace with Cleveland, they just didn't utilize Ware very often. What was it that you think they did to take him out of the game? And how can he is it just being a rookie and being kind of unfamiliar with the situation? Because there were moments there where he looked pretty comfortable and didn't, show any willingness to back down or anything like that. He was trying to be a solid, productive player out there, and yet it didn't seem like Erik Spoelstra thought that he was going to be effective out.
He got bullied. Cleveland's front line is big and experienced, and I would see how you'd be like, well, they have the the double big lineup. We should start our double big lineup to match up, but like theirs is way better than ours.
No doubt.
So they've got experience. All those guys do. Mobley's an all-star. Jared Allen has been an all-star. Like, Khalil Ware's just young. He just turned 21 years old today. It's just, he's not going to be able to match up. You're not going to be able to play those guys even. So I think that's why Miami went small, and they wanted to be a little bit more nimble. Garland would get Ware in the pick and roll and just abuse him. So it wasn't just like the pick and roll stuff. He also got abused on the boards. He had 3 rebounds in 20 minutes. Like, that's just not enough. And I don't know. Going up against Mobley and Allen and some of these guys that Cleveland has and their strength, I don't know that changes necessarily, like with more effort or more understanding of the bright lights. I just think it's a tough spot for a rookie to be in.
That's fair.
He's going to start. I don't think it'll be any different. And maybe there's a night where he's got it going a little bit more than he did. But, he had 2 blocks in the first few minutes of that game. I thought they were really important. Like, can they find ways to use Khalil Ware maybe off the ball defensively a little bit more? I think that could be interesting. But it's just so hard with, like, they don't have a shooter that you can help off of. Right. Like they make it really difficult for you. Listener questions. Malachi writes in, how can we get Bam more involved, taking better shots? It seems like you can't get anything going right now. Bam did start getting it going a little bit later, but you don't want him to have to resort to the
The mid
low
range.
block, ISO, jab step, pull up, jumper every single time for all of his points. They got to figure out ways to get him the ball. And specifically, it's been an issue for Miami, I think, all season long, but they don't have anybody that can throw him a decent entry pass. Like there was a couple of turnovers that they committed in this game just trying to get the Bam the ball in the post. They got to get him the ball better.
Yeah, I think Wiggins was particularly egregious in that regard. Although I think Mitchell, Hero, everybody was a little off in terms of their passing. But again, credit Cleveland's defense. Like they didn't make those entry passes easy for Miami,
Right.
as you might expect that they would. But that doesn't mean that Miami can afford to make those bad passes and just assume, well, Bam will get to it. That's there were so many times where he was in the low block and kind of establishing position, and they kind of dragged him out of where he was, even if he had like a guy like Garland or Merrill on him. You don't want that. You want him to take advantage of it and just kind of fluidly just lean into it and be able to just dominate that matchup for an easy 2 points, and that's not the case.
I would like to see Bam getting in semi-transition or something. Can you get him more of those switches on those Cleveland small guys? Whatever you could do to get that going.
It seemed like they were getting back defensively in transition very effectively. I don't know what the numbers are in terms of Cleveland's transition defense, but even when Bam was bringing the ball up court and trying to ignite something off a rebound, they were in position already, and he wasn't able to use his quickness to be able to attack the rim or anything like that. And on a couple of occasions, he would either look for that jumper or just start that whole process of swinging the ball around and seeing if somebody might be able to get open, and not very much ball movement. So it was just it was not great. And Cleveland presents a lot of challenges for Miami. They're a very good team.
Yep. I would like to see them get more steals and push off rebounds. Just looking at cleaning the glass, their best offense was unsurprisingly off of transition. They were very bad. They had an offensive rating of 89 points per 100 possessions in the half court. That's horrible. Cleveland scored at a rate of 124 points per 100 possessions. Like they just got killed in the half court. Cameron writes in, how do you think Erik Spoelstra coach team approaches game 2? What's the message to the team? And do you tweak your rotation, maybe give Nikola Jovic some run? Jovic was available for this game, but obviously did not play until they waved the white flag later in the game. I think the first thing is you got to clean up the turnovers. You got to control the controllables. You know that's what Erik Spoelstra is going to say. Hey, we had 14 turnovers in this game, 5 of them in the first quarter, got out to an early double-digit deficit, and we kind of were climbing uphill ever since then. I think you start there. You got to clean up the turnovers, and you have to win the possession battle or keep it even. Cleveland got 88 field goal attempts. Miami had 80. A lot of that was because of the turnovers. But then on the other side, you're probably trying to flip that a little bit and get more steals. Only five steals for Miami in this game. You want that to be like twice as much. And again, Cleveland does not turn the ball over a lot. This is easier said than done, but that would be the message at least is, hey, can we at least flip the possession battle a little bit and win that? And then that's going to give us more of a chance.
To a larger point about the messaging, again, I think a lot of it is what we think he said to this team during the play-in tournament, which was, your backs are against the wall. Nobody believes on you. Do you want to make history? Whose team is this? Like all these questions that have kind of dogged this group and continue to do so. It's like, who is going to step up? Look, you need more from Tyler. And we saw him step up on the occasions that he did against Chicago and Atlanta. Can he do it against a better team in Cleveland? Like the question mark about Tyler was, what version of him are you going to get? Oh, so he improved during the regular season. Okay, now that's the playoffs. It's a completely different animal. Now you're facing a tough defense, a much better group in Cleveland. And then you kind of harken back to what happened last year against Boston, where they really took him out of his game. What does he do now? How does he respond? And
do you look at this as a bad Tyler Herro game, or do you look at this as more of a Tyler Herro got no help and he was taken out of the game? Because I think again, I know I'm the Herro apologist. I kind of look at it as the latter. He went 7 of 18. He made 50% of his threes. He didn't turn the ball over a ton. He still had 21 points. They're still their most efficient scorer. It was just, it felt like he had to create everything on his own.
Yeah, but that's what he is. That's who he is. That's who he wants to be. And if that's the role that you want, then you're going to have to live up to it, and you're going to have to perform. It's an attack on him, but it's also the reality of what this group is. If you want to be 1A, you want to be in that conversation, as you said, along with Luka Doncic and Trae Young, et cetera. Well, then you've got to be able to step up in those moments. And it's easier to do that against poor defenses in Chicago and Atlanta. Now, how do you do it against Cleveland's defense? And I think that's the challenge for him. So he has to step up. Everybody has to find a way to step up.
But I think
You need
I
help?
think he needs I think he needs a coaching adjustment. I think Spo needs to do a better job of setting him up. You can't just. I don't care if you're Luka, Trae Young, Shea
Right.
Gilgeous-Alexander. Like no, these coaches just don't roll the ball out to them and just say you figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, there's a game plan, and I just think that Miami, I think, got jumped a little bit. I think Spo got jumped a little bit on the Tyler Herro part of this specifically. I don't
To
think
the
it was a poorly
rotation
coached
part.
game by Spo, but I think the
Yeah.
Hero part of it, they did not have a counterpunch for that necessarily.
To the rotation part, and specifically about Jovic, we talked about Davion Mitchell probably being in the starting lineup, or at least that's a change that we'd like to see.
Yep.
I don't know if Jovic is ready.
It's a lot to ask
How
of
is
a
he
guy who
going to
hasn't
impact the game?
played
Is
in a
he
long time.
like is he good enough to be able to create opportunities in transition? Like that's the nature of his game. You figure you might be able to get a couple more baskets that way. Is he comfortable enough? Is he still in a rhythm in terms of his perimeter shooting, so that if he's open, he's going to be able to knock it down at a high enough clip that justifies him being out there? Does he
Yep.
have the combination of size and skill to be able to attack Cleveland's bigs and maybe get something at the rim? Those are huge questions. But you know what? In a sense, I want to see it. Like you have to find out who Nico is. Like he was playing at a very high level, then he gets hurt. What is he? Is he not necessarily a core piece, but is he a piece that you can at least inflate in terms of overall value, not just on the team, but perhaps as he's viewed around the league? And that being the case, give him those minutes, test him. We saw him step up against Boston in some moments last year. He didn't seem like he had any back down in him either. And maybe he'll respond to the challenge. He is a lot tougher than you might think, considering his age and his European background or anything like that. Like he responds well to those challenges. And I think he could have a big moment against Cleveland. I'd like to see it in game 2 and hope that maybe he finds a way to outperform expectations. And just if he's changing things around and he's productive, that opens things up for everybody else, because all of a sudden now you got to go out there and guard the 6'10" Serbian, and that makes things a lot easier for it.
I'd feel a lot better about the Nico option if he had played at some point over the last 2 months. I just don't know. I don't know what level of rust he's at. I have no idea what physically, if he has got any wind. And now to throw him out there against maybe the best team in the NBA is okay. I think the bridge. I'm not saying Nikola Jovic does not have a role in this series. I think the bridge between where you're at now and then the Nico card, playing that card, is Kyle Anderson. Because he does present a lot of the same things. He doesn't run the floor the way that Nico does, but in terms of big guy who can handle the ball and make some jumpers and stuff like that, like he does that. And if Alec Burks is going to be, if you're going to start Davion Mitchell and now you're going to open up a new spot in the rotation because Alec Burks maybe isn't part of it, I would go with Kyle Anderson first as sort of a big guy who presents some matchup issues. See if he could play a role in this series, and then if not, kind of say, okay, well, maybe then we go to Nico. It kind of worked with Kyle Anderson, but we need a little bit more speed, a little bit more explosiveness. Maybe then we go with Nico. But I'm not against it, but I don't really see that as a game 2 adjustment. Last thing here, we're running long, so we just want to be quick. Antonio writes in, only 31 3-point attempts. I think the only way we can win is to get up as many threes like we did against Boston in game 2 last year. What do you guys think? I think that's fair. 31 attempts from 3 compared to 43 for Cleveland. Cleveland's the number 1 3-point shooting team in the league. You got to get up more. I think it's very simple. You got to trade out some of those mid-range shots for more threes. And by the way, if they're going to clog the lane and you're not going to get to the paint, then you have to overcome that with three-pointers, not mid-range shots, right? Because the mid-range shots are worth as many as the ones at the rim, and you're going to hit them at a lower percentage. The only way to make up for that math battle is to take more threes. They have to figure out a way to get more threes up in the series, or this thing is over. This thing's over.
Yep. Easier said than done, though, because I think their perimeter defense was pretty good. But yes, absolutely.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.